right, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. I'm not sure what time it is wherever you are watching our webinar today. I want to thank you all for joining us. And for the webinar today, our topic is mental wellness as a business strategy with Kate Burns. First and foremost, thank you for being here with us, Kate. I really do appreciate it. Um, Before we get started, before we get too much into things here, for just a little bit of housekeeping. If participants, if you've got questions, there's a Q&A button or a Q&A in the bottom or a chat in the bottom. So just pop your questions in there and we will try and get to them. If we don't, we should have your information and we can get to you via email. So once again, thank you all for joining us. So that's it. I am Chris Tibble, President and Chief Operating Officer of PuzzleHR. If you follow us on YouTube or our podcasts or any of the other things that we do, you have probably seen some of the stuff that we do. I am joined by a really special guest today, Kate Burns. Kate Burns is a Los Angeles-based facilitator, poet, and speaker who helps people pause, reflect, and reconnect with themselves. Kate draws from her own journey through burnout and overwhelm, and Kate designs creative emotional wellness workshops for teams, treatment centers, and groups in transition. Her work offers a judgment-free space for participants to explore what's beneath the surface so that they can move forward with greater clarity and confidence. Kate, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Timmel. I'm excited to be here.
How was my intro? Was that okay?
Yeah, that was excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. So Kate, I know I did, I don't know if I did it justice, but tell us a little bit about your practice, Create and Heal.
Yeah, so Create and Heal really came from my own experience with difficulties with emotional regulation and mental health. I really struggled in my early 20s. I was a very high achiever, and through a series of very unfortunate events, experienced quite a bit of burnout, both in my professional life and my personal life. That led me on quite a journey. Traveling around, I've been to almost 60 countries at this point, just looking for answers and looking to understand how humans relate to one another, how we relate to ourselves. And over the course of that journey, was able to create some resources and tools for myself to help myself bounce back, rebound, be more resilient in dealing with emotional struggles. And I wanted to share that and bring that to others who were experiencing similar struggles.
That's amazing. You've done some really good work, and you're doing some work with us here at Puzzle, and we really appreciate you for that. Um, First question, I guess, and we'll just chat. What would you like our audience to take away or get out of today's talk?
Oh, if I could sum that up, is that mental and emotional wellness programs in the workplace aren't just nice to have, they're necessary to prioritize if you want to see long-term success in business.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, perfect. So that jumps right into the first kind of question. And what does it really look like when wellness is truly integrated into business strategy, kind of rather than sort of treated as a separate initiative? We talked a little bit about this yesterday, so let's dive into that if we could.
Yeah, I feel like when it's integrated in rather than seen as just this separate initiative, it's because think about it, in business, anything that is prioritized, it's being measured. And so it's showing up not just in the culture, not just in the way leaders are engaging with employees are engaging with another. I mean, it needs to be also showing up in KPIs and the things that the company is measuring as proof of success, as goals that they're reaching towards. And I
Mhm.
feel like that would be in the difference of, rather than saying, all right, we're going to achieve X number of sales this quarter, incorporating these wellness initiatives of, okay, we're going to achieve X number of sales this quarter with less than, 20 hours of overtime logged each week, like making sure that that is also considered in the goals that are being created.
So that's, so it's interesting, so it's kind of like we talked a little bit about this yesterday. It's sort of like, diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI and B, which was, all the rage, um, 24 months ago and is not as much, as it is today. When I think of something like DE and I, right, you know, to me, it's just the golden rule: treat other people as you want to be treated, right? And so if you treat other people the way you'd want to be treated, the way you want your family members to be treated, if you do that in your business, if that's integrated throughout your business as if it's a strategy, if that's just how you operate, then by default, you're going to have DE and I, right? Your organization is going to be, by default, will have appropriate amounts of DE and I, and people feel like they belong in the organization. Is it like kind of the same, like you're saying sort of the same sort of thing, around wellness? How do you do that though? Like, what's the golden rule around wellness in the organization, if you could have one?
Yeah, so I love that you brought up, the golden rule in what would naturally create DEI is treat others how you want to be treated. And I think what the value that emotional and mental wellness programs bring into the workplace is the awareness and the realization that we often do not treat others how we want to be treated. We treat others how we treat ourselves. And so
Well,
what mental and emotional awareness does is it puts the onus back on how am I treating myself? Because 9 times out of 10, someone who comes into a situation with a lot of judgment, with a lot of criticism, with high, almost impossible expectations, guess what they're doing to themselves on a regular basis? And so it's bringing that self awareness, self understanding into the workplace so we can switch that around of, I need to understand how I treat me to better treat others.
that, like, I don't know that you know what you just said. Maybe you do, and you did it on purpose.
Yeah.
Right, because that's really brutal. You said, like, I want to hear you say it again. You treat others the way you treat yourself, right?
Mhm.
And some of us who are of a certain age, right? And I'm thinking of a conversation that I had with a colleague at lunch yesterday, and we were talking about people going on vacation, and because it's summertime, sales was slow, et cetera, et cetera. And this individual was really, really frustrated. This one's on vacation, that one's on vacation. It's like, I don't take vacation. And you know what my first thought was? Me either. When I go on vacation, I work. And truthfully, in the back of my mind, a lot of times, I'm talking about me now, right? So I have to stop myself from from being upset or perturbed or put off, when people are taking the time that they need. So I don't know who talked to you about this, but yeah, you're inside my head right now.
Yeah, no, that's such a good example because it's so true. And I've worked with so many people who hold themselves to such impossibly high expectations or of such high standards. And then that's what creates judgment and criticism when engaging with others that can slowly erode a workplace environment. Because even if you're not presenting and speaking to that person with the resentment you're feeling, that resentment is still there, that bitterness and that judgment exists, and it's going to slowly like work its way into that relationship and make it impossible to really collaborate in a way that would propel business goals and ideas and movements forward.
And let's talk about that erosion, right?
Mm.
And if you could, like, what does that practically in the workforce look like when that hard charging driving leader is really dripping on their employees over time, right? Putting out their energy into them. Like, how does that manifest itself, do you think? Like, what does it end up looking like?
Yeah, I think that ends up looking like a work environment where you experience high levels of burnout, quiet quitting, high turnover, because that's always going to affect the way employees are showing up and engaging in work. And I think it's so important to recognize. I think it was the Harvard Business Review who published a study back in 2019 who really showed that the work environment plays a much higher role in employee burnout than the individual employee themselves. And it's recognizing that, you know, how leaders are showing up and how they model and what they reward in their employees is absolutely going to affect the environment and show how employees can be showing up. So exactly what you were saying earlier of like, you know, if you don't take vacations without also working and you're working on vacations and you're available at all hours, like day and night, that's modeling for the employees of like, this is kind of what's expected. And
Yeah.
that can absolutely wear an employee down, and the recognition that over time you can churn through employees all you like, but eventually it's going to be impossible to get new talent in. And that's what leads to the failure of a company and the failure of a business
Yeah.
over time.
Because leaders model the way, right? Like that's we think about that. No matter no matter what you say, right? They hear what you say, but they see what you do, right?
Yeah. And I think what one something that people get so wrong is that burnout isn't the result of working hard. Burnout is the result of working hard without support,
Mm.
without feeling a sense of meaning, and without getting the opportunity to recharge. It's not, oh, you know, these people just don't work hard. It's no, you're not providing the support and the ability to recharge that any human being would need in that space.
Yeah, and maybe you're not, you're working hard, but it's running on a treadmill, right? You're not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
You might be sweating a lot, right?
Yeah.
But but
Yeah,
you're not getting
exactly.
anywhere.
It's like, what's the end goal for me? Because, and I think it's so important for leaders to recognize that, especially business owners and business founders. It's like your purpose and your meaning is so inherent because it's tied to this is your creation. And you want to extend that same level of meaning. Obviously, it can't be the same meaning because this is your company. That same
Mhm.
level of meaning to every employee who works for you, to get
Yeah,
that same emotional investment in their work and in the goals and the success that they see.
awesome. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. So, all right. So let's talk about so we have leaders, we have HR leaders. So now on in this webinar, we've got folks on the front lines, we've got folks in the C-suite, and then we've got the HR organization, right? And so a lot of times, it's the HR organization that needs to sort of present the business case for investing in mental wellness programs. And okay, as the C-suite person, whose HR person comes to them from time to time on these things, and as a person who owns an HR company, whose HR business partners oftentimes kind of bring these, work to bring these positions or the programs into their organizations. How can your HR leaders make the business case for investing in a mental wellness program? Like, what's the best way to do it that you've seen?
Yeah, I think it depends on what kind of leader you're working with. I think some leaders can really wrap their mind around the sort of, for lack of a better term, just the common sense element of obviously employees who are really good at emotional regulation or not struggling mentally are going to show up and be able to give me 110% at work every day and not slowly build up resentment, bitterness, and tap out as soon as they get the opportunity to. And I think with other leaders, it's really valuable to, bring them the studies and the research that have been done. I think it was Deloitte who published a mental health ROI calculator, and they have so many studies that show that the return on investment of money spent in a company, in a firm, in an organization on mental health and mental wellness programs, whether it's reactive or proactive, short term or long term, you're always seeing a return on investment. Obviously, if it's short term, there's less of a return on your investment than like a long term one.
Mhm.
But yeah, and so then you can bring that research of like, here is physical proof to the leaders who are like, I still don't see the value here. It's like
Mhm. Mhm.
you're gonna be making a return on that investment.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's interesting. I want to take a look at that to look calculator. I'll find that.
Yeah,
Um, let's pivot a little bit, shall we? Because we just kind of like got into it, and I almost forgot we were doing a webinar. So tell us a story, Kate. Tell us a success story of you working with one of your clients. Like, what did you walk into? what did you see? And obviously, no, don't protect, no names, protect the innocent, right? But what did you see? What did you do? What was the end result?
Yeah. So I was working with a group at a treatment center last year, and there was an individual who was just so reticent and so just did not believe, did not see the value in any of this. And I think when it comes to when you really believe in something and you know the value, it's so quick to want to be like, no, let me convince this person. And what I think the value of this stuff really comes down to is being able to meet people where they're at and lean into understanding rather than judging, lean into exploration rather than convincing.
Mhm.
And it was really powerful to get to hear his perspective on why there was so much judgment and why there was so much hesitancy to engage with the material, because through that conversation and through allowing him to show up in the programs in ways that were honest and authentic to his experience, it was actually really interesting to see how over a few weeks it started to sort of break down those barriers. And then he started to see in his own life, in the way that he was engaging with the others around him, and even in his family life, he came back to me and he told me, he was like, I'm just able to be aware of my emotions in the moment, and I'm not reacting anymore, and I'm making better decisions. And
Mhm.
it was so powerful. Instead of just jumping in to convince and be like, no, you don't understand, like this is what's going to happen, and allowing people to notice it happening for themselves, because you don't need to convince anyone. When what you do actually makes change, it's just allowing creating space for them to notice it within themselves. And that was really amazing, because I really saw how, his experience at the treatment center just completely changed in the way he was relating to others and relating to the work he was doing.
That's interesting, and obviously a positive business result as a result.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's. So I'm in the back bedroom because there's really good light in here, right? And which makes me think about work from home, right?
Mm.
Since COVID, many of us are working from home. I go to the office once a quarter. It's 55 minutes away. Um, and and so I don't go. It's just traffic, et cetera, et cetera. So many people out there are working from home. Like I said, my entire organization is basically remote. A couple hundred employees. Um, how can leaders and managers, when you're not walking by and seeing someone in the break room or et cetera, like how can leaders and managers recognize when an employee um, is a little burned out, or when an employee maybe doesn't feel or a peer, maybe, or when a peer doesn't feel psychologically safe or safe to kind of be their whole selves in the organization. Like, I know that's two completely different things, but maybe you can talk about those two things. Start wherever you like. Like, how can we know?
Yeah, I think that is such a great question, because I think there is a direct answer, and I think the indirect answer is a little bit more powerful. So let me go the direct route, and then I'll take us to what I think really is the key to exactly what you were just saying. So obviously there's been so much research and studies done on burnout, what it is, how to tell the sign of it. One of the main ones is Maslow's burnout inventory, which talks about, emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a reduced sense of personal accomplishment in the workplace. And I feel like those are like the key indicators and pretty noticeable. And I get this so much where it's like, all right, but what are the more subtle, the more like overlooked indicators that someone's experiencing burnout? And I feel like rather than giving leaders an impossibly inexhaustible list of all the ways a human being could be processing this unique experience of burnout and be giving indicators, I think leaders really need to focus on creating psychological safety in the workplace, which empowers employees to advocate for themselves, to let their leaders and their managers know, hey, this is what I'm experiencing, and I think this is what I'm going to need to move forward. Because then that takes you out of the role of sort of like pseudo parent of I just need to know my employees so well that I can pick up on the tiniest cue. It's like, no, I need to let my employees know that I'm someone safe to come to. So if they're experiencing struggle, if they're starting to feel burnout, overwhelm, I'm burning the candle at both ends, my personal life is up in flames, they can come to me and we can problem solve together. Obviously, I'm keeping the company's best interests at heart. They're advocating for themselves, and we're going to find a compromise that meets us both in the middle. And so I think psychological safety in the workplace is key to that.
Okay, so perfect. So many words, way too big for me.
Yeah.
So psychological safety, mumbo jumbo-y, what does that mean?
No, that's fair. That's fair. Psychological safety really just it just comes down to the belief that I am not going to be punished, humiliated, or judged for coming to another employee or someone I work with ideas, questions, feedback, or even a disagreement.
Mhm.
So I
Here's-
feel safe.
So, all right. So one of the other webinars that we're doing, or the other sessions here in the symposium, is managing in the multi-generational workplace, right? So we've got Boomer, Gen Z, Gen X, Millennial. We're all going to be sitting down and we're going to be talking. That's actually one of the things that we're going to be talking about, right? So, okay, um, I grew up like being bullied and teased and whatnot, like that was rite of passage, right?
Yeah.
For my generation and for the boomer generation, right? And so it's a love language, right? You know, um, and it's super interesting where wow, I'm actually thinking back to something that actually happened for me personally, where used to operating in that, bully, tease, poke fun, yada yada, sort of an environment. Um, and and I've been doing this for a really long time, and I can think about a time when I had an employee that we'll say didn't take kindly to it, right? And I didn't notice it. I thought I was being I thought I was showing love. I'm like, hey, if I'm teasing you, it's because I really like you, right? If I'm busting your chops, it's because you're my top person. It's because I love you. It's because I know you're going to do great here, like because I feel that we are so close. Um, and and if I'm not, is when you should be worried, right? Like in me, right? That's kind of the way I operate. And that's why some of us older folks sort of think that way. But when you're
Yeah.
other people don't, and as the generations you get younger folks in the workplace, they don't operate that way, right?
Yeah.
They don't operate that way. So I think, and I know this is you teaching us, but maybe this is me just being taught. As you're leading in the workplace, you do need to kind of figure out where people are and understand that, hey, that may be okay for you, right? But that may not be okay for them, right?
Yeah.
And doing that, like doing the teasing, the chop busting, etc., especially when you're remote, right? And
Yeah.
you really don't have that, close personal connection. You're not going to go yuck it up over, drinks or a coffee or a lunch because you're in LA and I'm in Sarasota or whatever, right? You don't really, you have the interaction, right? And then you may not have an interaction until for another week and another Zoom, right? And so all that negative self-talk happens in your head, or the negative spin up happens in your head. I call it negative cotton candy, right?
Mm.
Um, Pause. Cotton candy machine, right? You get like those big bags of cotton candy, right?
Yeah.
That's like only a teaspoon of sugar,
Yeah.
right? Spins
Yeah.
into this really big bag of cotton candy. And so I always think about, like, whenever I always think about that, right? Just a little grain of sugar in somebody's head can spin into something to take up a whole lot of space if you're not there, as a leader to if you're not there as a leader to kind of like as we were saying, just, it's okay, didn't mean it that way, come on, we're just kidding, let's whatever it is, right? So because in the absence of, if you don't have information, your brain's going to, fill up the space with the negative to protect you, right? So, again, I don't know where I was going with that, but that's like a learning for me, is that to create that safe space, you got to know that people may not be where you are. Am I kind of picking up on that?
Well, can I actually provide a little bit of pushback? And I'm so grateful that you
Yeah.
shared that example, because I think it's so important when we're exploring multi-generational workplaces where we have people who grew up in different generations and so internalize different messages, like grew up in completely different ways. And one thing I love about, mental and emotional wellness in the workplace is that it's not political correctness. It's not, oh, everyone needs to show up. It's not this like dystopian utopia of like, well, if we all just wore gray and there was no differences between us and we all spoke in this perfect way, then we'd be able to communicate exactly like the giver, for example, like in that way.
Yeah.
It's definitely about creating space for everyone to show up the way they are. So the way you just described how you show up and how you relate to others, it sounds like that comes from just the best intentions. There's no malice there, there's no, unkindness. And so what mental and emotional wellness programs can do in a workplace is really help employees improve their EQ, so their emotional intelligence of recognizing the way someone treats me has nothing to do with me, it has to do with them, and it gives them the skills they can use for like empathy, confidence, self-esteem, to be able to approach someone, even someone above them, and say, hey, I'm not sure how this was meant, here's how I took it, let me know, if I'm off base or something. And then, because think about it, you're getting an employee and you have no idea what environment they came from before. It's almost like getting like a pound puppy. Like you don't know if it was like a really bad work environment where their boss was awful to them. And so they got like triggering from just playing around. But it's just about showing up consistently in your honest, authentic truth of like, hey, let me let you know that this is just how I relate to people, how I tease. If you don't like it and if it's upsetting to you, I'm going to do my best to put a curb on that. But hopefully over time, I'll be able to show you like, this is who I am. I really mean no malice and I'm just a genuine caring guy. And then we can create that psychological safety between us of, it's not coming from a bad place. Cause I think there needs to be space for everyone to show up as long as there's no ill intention, how they
Mhm.
authentically are in the workplace, and to recognize that, the offense that might be created in someone could be coming from past issues that they need to explore, that can really, mental and emotional wellness programs can really help with, of understanding, why am I the way I am, why do I perceive this situation the way I perceive this situation, why do I respond how I respond.
That's super interesting. You brought me back to college, by the way.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, you did absolutely. So I'm thinking about when I was on the other side of it, right? Like, so one of my favorite jobs ever, I was a waiter at an Italian restaurant, and the owner was Vinny, who's this giant guy, like he's a big dude, Marine, right? Obviously, probably in his 60s at the time, and rough, loud, like he'd like kick you in the butt. He's like, hey chief, so he'd call me chief all the time. Right, I'm there for like 3 weeks, and I tell the bartender Jackie, and I'm like, yeah, hey, it was really nice working with you. I'm gonna quit today. It's gonna be my last day. She's like, why? I'm like, Vinny hates me. She's like, what are you talking about? He loves you. I'm like, what is? She's like, you're in. How do you think you got into the main dining room? Like nobody gets in there. He absolutely loves you. I'm like, well, he doesn't even know my name. He's like, he doesn't have to know your name. He trust me. He loves you. And I stayed there like throughout the rest of my college career. I had a great relationship with him and the family and everything. So like literally your point, right? Like it is, you know, it, like I had to kind of figure out where he was, right?
Yeah.
And we had a great relationship after that.
Yeah, and I think vice versa, it can go both ways on both ends of like, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I don't know what your intentions were. They're not accusing, they're not pointing fingers. They're just like, hey, I don't know what your intentions were when you said this, did this, etc. It hit me the wrong way. I didn't really appreciate it. Now, if you're getting defensive, it's probably because you're creating a story in your mind of this person thinks I'm a bad person. They
Mhm.
think I'm mean and unkind. And so now you're projecting that onto them. And instead of just seeing them and saying like, hey, that totally wasn't my intention. I'm so sorry. That's how it came off. So, it's both sides that kind of need to improve the EQ in certain situations like that. But I really think, with a higher EQ in employees, in leaders, there doesn't need to be this, oh, we're tiptoeing around each other. We're walking on eggshells trying to not hurt anybody because everybody feels comfortable to say if that hurt them to just speak up and say, hey, right in the moment or when it's appropriate. Obviously sometimes it might not be the best time right in that moment to just come to them and be like, hey, I didn't really appreciate that, not sure what was meant by it, but it hit me this way. And then it's like, oh my god, so sorry. Definitely will keep that in mind in the future. And then now it's a non-issue.
Right, right. Okay. So you dropped a little psychologist jargon on us all today. So EQ, what does that mean?
Emotional intelligence. So IQ is a measure of like analytical critical intelligence, and EQ is a measure of your emotional intelligence. So if you find that your emotions get the better of you, you
Mhm.
tend to react a lot from emotions and take your emotions out on others. That might lean towards a lower EQ, which can be built up. It's a skill, just like anything.
So EQ, emotional quotient, IQ, intelligence quotient.
Correct.
So, so how can someone, what are some tips and tricks for people to, kind of figure out, or maybe tools where people can sort of figure out where they are EQ wise, and some things that they can do to develop their EQ if they want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the work that I do is really based around that. So I think writing is an incredible tool because it's such a low barrier to entry activity that you can do to build up EQ. And when I say build up EQ, I mean really an exploration of self because that's what EQ is. It really goes back to what we're circling back to what I said before, where it's you treat people how you treat yourself. And
Mhm.
so how you're treating people, how you're treating yourself ties so directly into your emotional intelligence. And so gaining a self awareness and a self understanding of why you are the way you are, why you react, and journaling and creative writing and exploring it indirectly. Because sometimes it can be difficult to explore directly. So, creative writing allows for sort of indirect exploration that can lead to more truth than you would find if you were just going head on. And what I love about creative writing for that is that, unlike other artistic ways of exploring this, you don't need a lot of supplies. You need paper and a pencil. Like if you want to do this with like paint or music, you have to spend a decent chunk of money to get some supplies to do this work. But yeah.
So it's not just like, go home, take out a loose leaf, and but I will have better EQ 50 times. That doesn't work, is what you're saying?
No, no. Unfortunately, like I do think there is a time and a place for that whole fake it till you make it. But I think when it comes to self-awareness and self-understanding, there's no faking that. You're either allowing yourself to explore who you are and why you are the
Mhm.
way you are, or you're lying to yourself and just hoping for the best every day, which
Mhm.
some people do. It creates for a lot of more emotional tumultuousness, and especially in the workplace that can create a lot more problems than I think most companies want. They're more trying to do solutions and reach goals rather than conflict resolution between employees who maybe just need a little bit more self-exploration.
So let's talk. Thank you for that. So let's talk. So let's give the folks at home, uh, or at office, wherever you are watching our webinar. So let's give them a creative writing prompt. Like what would be a good prompt for someone to, because you're not just going to sit down and write, the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, and the lazy dog's name was Bubble, right? Like so what is something that you can give us that we can take and say, okay, I want to explore my emotional intelligence. What's a prompt to get people to start writing?
Yeah, I think one that I really love to do especially to help people sort of depersonalize their emotions. Because sometimes you can be so tied to your own, the way you perceive yourself, like angry you or sad you. It can be so tied to how you see yourself that creating a little bit of distance can help you actually understand that emotion separate from you. So, one creative prompt that's really creative that I love to do is take people through, like, write down a quick little list of like three emotions that you struggle with the most, the ones that really get you and get the better of you. Pick one of those, and then I want you to describe them as a character separate from you. And so, is this emotion male or female, or non-binary or ambiguous? What color is their hair? Is it curly? Is it straight? Is it blue? Is it, and then describing and creating a character that represents this emotion to you, and then writing a letter to that emotion from you, expressing all the things you want to say to it, whether that's built up resentment of like, dear anger, you're ruining my life. Like, really, you've ruined all of my relationships. That you're getting the better of me. I think I'm about to get fired. And like allowing yourself to express it as something separate from you.
Mhm, mhm.
And so, and then another little prompt is to have that emotion write you back, and to allow them to express what it is they think and feel about all the accusations you're framing at them.
Wow. I'm processing that. I'm thinking about what an emotion, like what is an emotion, Chris? Okay, which one would I pick and what would I say to it? Um, but this isn't about me. This is about all of you who are watching us here today. So thank you for that. That's really interesting. But all right, let's talk back. Let's get back to EQ and emotional intelligence, really in the workplace. All right. So um, so this is your question. So what behaviors or leadership styles demonstrate high EQ in action?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I mean, to me, I feel like these are so common sense, but I think they're really powerful and often overlooked. Of high empathy. I think every person in a leadership position in any organization really needs to be developing their skill of empathy. And that is like being able to understand another person's perspective and recognize its equal validity to your own. Not that one is right, one is wrong. They're just equally valid. They're just different.
Mhm,
Definitely active listening. So listening with the intention to understand rather than respond, rather than prove your point, really trying to hear what the other person is saying. Um, I would say, yeah, going back to the empathy, especially leaning into empathy when making decisions, considering how every decision you make is going to affect your team, and not necessarily letting that sway your decision, but already understanding the potential effects it will have, so you can, get a head start on mitigating any of those that might be more negative.
mhm,
And then absolutely going back to what we were just talking about, emotional regulation under stress. I think leaders, more so than any other employee, I think a company benefits from all employees having a decent level of emotional regulation under stress, but especially leaders. Because if you have leaders who are consistently taking their emotions out on their employees, and especially leaders who don't then eventually come back, take accountability, and do what's necessary to repair those professional relationships, that's just a recipe for disaster.
mhm. I appreciate that. So let's okay. So I'd like for you to tell us another story. So you talked earlier about when you were working with a treatment center and you had someone who was not necessarily a believer. They went for, or they were not necessarily an enthusiastic beginner insofar as working with you through your program. But in the end, thankfully, you didn't convince them. They began to understand, and then they changed. So that was great. Um, tell us another story. Tell us another like really good success story of Kate in action with a customer,
Okay.
with an organization that you worked with.
Ooh, okay. Um, I feel like there's so many different stories I could choose from. I'm trying to think what would be of the most benefit to this specific audience?
This audience is, as you're thinking, the audience is so broad.
Okay.
I don't think you can miss. And remember, we've got everybody. We've got people at Puzzle. We've got our partners on, centers of influence that we work with. We've got a number of our clients who span industry from, nonprofit to publicly traded companies. We've got the C-suite. We've got HR functionaries, HR organization folks, and then frontline employees. So I don't think you could miss.
Okay. Okay. Well, here, let me choose this story because it ties back into what we were talking about with, burnout and just improving communication. I was working with a nonprofit specifically. I was doing workshops with just the managers and leaders in the nonprofit, and they were experiencing so much high turnover. It was getting to the point where it just wasn't sustainable. And I started working with them, just going through, and we were actually creating the workplace well-being toolkit together, and through the different practices that we were doing to help them improve EQ and to understand like the importance of empathy, compassion, and understanding, even especially in the workplace. They were able to mitigate, because obviously it's a nonprofit, so it's working with, just less expenses. And they were able to mitigate the difficulties they were facing in the amount of pay that they were provided to these jobs that they were experiencing such high turnover in, by offering other benefits and just seeing it from the employee's perspective and recognizing the value of, okay, we can't unfortunately improve what this job looks like financially, but we can absolutely make it more enticing through allowing for a little bit more flexibility in the work hours, and allowing a little bit more flexibility in, some remote days, and just making sure that we're there for the employee as they're navigating the personal stress they were experiencing. And like within the year, the turnover was nowhere near what it had been. They were able to keep several employees for longer than they had in a while. So that was really incredible to see the way empathy, compassion, understanding, rather than, we just need to find people who can push through.
Yeah.
The way it can change it.
And that goes back to what we were talking about before, right? Like, so treat others the way you want to be treated, right? Like meeting, and then you said, meeting people where they are. That's having that emotional kind of connection with the employees. And kind of you listen, you hear, and you help them create, you help them see what they missed,
Yeah.
right? And through the use of this toolkit, which you just glossed over, like, oh, I got a toolkit, um, which I need you to tell us a little bit about. But yeah, so you went in, worked with them, created this toolkit, and that's what kind of helped them see the forest for the trees and find ways to decrease their turnover and get, in the case of a nonprofit, get more mission,
Mm,
right? Accomplish more of their mission because they had more effectively margin. They were spending less. Turnover is important. But tell us about this. Tell us about your toolkit. Like, what does it do?
Yeah, so the Workplace Wellbeing Toolkit is a really incredible resource that I developed, that I really liken as an understanding, because what's so powerful about it is how adjustable and personalized it is, not just to, each, different company, but every single different employee who creates one for themselves. And I always think back to that story that I heard, gosh, when I was in college, of the Air Force was trying to create a seat for their fighter pilot jets. And they were like, okay, how do we make sure this fits everybody? And they're like, well, let's just, measure all the fighter pilots, and then we'll take the averages of all of them, and that's what we'll do. And what they did when they did that is that it didn't fit anybody well. It was really uncomfortable and difficult for every single person,
So
because it was
basically Southwest.
exactly. And it wasn't until they invented the design of the adjustable seat, which we all have in our cars that are so wonderful, that it was something that was able to fit each unique person because it was adjustable to their own needs. And that's exactly what the workplace well-being toolkit is. And what was so powerful in it is I see every interaction I do with a company, with an employee, with an individual, it's a collaboration.
Mhm.
No one knows better about your company, your role, your life than you. I know EQ, like emotional intelligence, mental health, and well being, but you are the expert on you. And so it's that collaboration of the two. And so it was through the resources that they were creating for their own workplace well-being toolkits that they were bringing in their expertise of the situation, the frustration they were experiencing with the high turnover, the stress it was creating, the additional workload and everything, and using those resources to find solutions that were actually feasible rather than just being like, we just need somebody who's willing to work harder.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Got it. I got it. I just looked at the time. I think we're doing great. We've got a few minutes left.
okay.
Um, there's a there's a in the chat because I chatted it to myself. Is that we didn't finish? There's a question I asked that we didn't finish, and it was especially with road employees, people being hybrid and remote. What are some subtle or overlooked signs of burnout that managers should watch for? Like, what are some cues or some clues that an employee is getting a little crispy?
Oh no, we did go over that question, but my emphasis and my beliefs is more on ensuring and doing what you can as a leader to create psychological safety
Mhm.
because like the cues for hunger in 10 different people is going to be 10 different cues. The cues
Mhm.
for frustration in 10 different people is going to be 10 different cues.
Mhm.
So rather than putting the onus on a leader or a manager to notice, every single unique employee's own individual cues for how they're experiencing this, I think it's just so important to not only model psychological safety for your
Mhm.
employees by being vulnerable, by being honest and open when you make a mistake, when you need a mental health day, but also rewarding that in them to just really create that culture of this is a safe space to just speak up. Because
Mhm.
then you don't have to waste your valuable mental energy on trying to pick up almost impossibly, especially like you said, in remote spaces like online, it's next to impossible because if we're on a meeting, anyone can be on or perform for an hour, 30 minutes. You have no
Mhm.
idea. They could close that laptop and be like, and you would never see that. So,
Right.
like, you
Right.
can't hold yourself to the standard of seeing things you can't see. So, I think it's just a better use of mental and emotional energy towards creating psychological safety.
Okay. So don't. So if you see a not so subtle sign, pay attention to
Yeah.
it.
Don't be
But
like over here psychoanalyzing every interaction with all your employees. Like she scratched her nose twice. Like, does she have eczema? You know what I mean? I need to diagnose. I need to help her out. Like, because then that's truly a waste of a leader's valuable mental energy. And it's so much better to just do the little tweaks necessary to reinforce and create psychological safety in your team of just reinforcing this is a space where you can speak up because then and that also empowers your employees to be grown adults on their own and say, I can address my needs when they come up. I don't need somebody to notice them for me.
okay, that's absolutely fair. Is if so you're saying if you create an environment where people feel safe,
Hmm.
that they can come to you and say, hey, you know what? I need a mental health day. Or
Yeah.
they can come to you and say, this is a lot.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, but so that they can come to their leadership and express how they're feeling. Then we as leaders, as business owners, HR folks can do something about it or help them do something about it inside the organization.
Yeah.
So
And it's
so if you see the sign, it's too late, maybe.
maybe case by case basis.
Right.
It
Okay.
depends on how long that employee's been there, the relationship, their desire to stay, everything like that. It case by case basis. But yeah,
Gotcha.
think it's just such a better use of energy to be creating that rather than, because you're a leader, you're not a parent. You don't need to be noticing all of your employees' needs and noticing their little, their tweaks and everything. That I think human beings do better when we feel empowered to take full ownership of what we're feeling and experiencing. And that's emotional, physiological, psychological, and be confident in our ability to express our needs and get them met.
And that's what you do, is help businesses create that environment by
Mhm.
helping develop leadership in the organization, helping them understand how they can kind of develop the environment for their company. Am I picking that up?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So looking ahead, last question. This has been a great conversation. Once again, I want to thank you for spending some time with me today, with all of us today. It's been helpful for me. I think sometimes these things I do just for me, because I get so much out of them. But looking ahead, what are some of the emerging trends or innovations that excite you the most about, supporting employee mental health or mental health in the workplace?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a trick question to me because don't get me wrong, I think every, new resource and tool that's created has its place and is valuable and there will be someone who needs it and gets value from it. But I think what excites me the most is the rediscovery that we're seeing of how invaluable emotional and mental wellness programs in the workplace are, and how it's not just, nice on a human to human level to offer this to employees. It's necessary for companies to prioritize these kinds of programs and creating these kinds of environments for the company's success. And so that rediscovery of how it is a win-win situation all around, I think that's what's really exciting me.
That's great. That's great. I was going to say ChatGPT.
ChatGPT what? Oh,
Chat ChatGPT as your office therapist.
yeah.
Hi, ChatGPT. I'm feeling a little burned out today. What should I do?
No,
Right.
and you know what's great? I've actually utilized ChatGPT like to see the difference in prompts. So I imagine myself as like someone with a very low EQ reaching out to ChatGPT, like kind of like starting like figuring it out and then like higher up, like really where you are and the kind of prompt you're giving based off your own recognition, self-awareness, self-understanding is going to dictate the value of the response you're getting. So regardless of like ChatGPT offering value, it still is 100% affected by your ability to communicate where you're at, why you're there, and what you need, which it's just core, it's foundational.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. And Kate, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they get in touch with you? How do they follow you? How do they find out more about Kate Burns?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website, it's here on the webinar, createandhealkb.com. You can also reach out to me on over email, Kate at createhealkb.com.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Socials, we're going to find you on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Reddit, wherever those other places, all the other socials.
So for my own mental and emotional well-being, I realized who I am as a person. I do best when I'm not tied every aspect of my life to social media. So really, truly, it's mostly my website and then over email.
Fantastic. Kate Burns, createandhealedkb.com. Thank you so much for imparting your wisdom on us today, giving us some uh, tips and tricks and things to look out for all of us to help our workspaces and our employees um, be better where they are. So, Kate, thank you very much. Once again, I appreciate it and look forward to working with you in the very near future.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you for having me. It
All
was
right.
it was a pleasure.
Thanks so much. Take care.